Greetings and welcome to the pilot episode of Skyrim's Hidden Gems, the underrated mods of the North. Now I know this is a predominantly Morrowind modding based channel, and quite a few people in the Morrowind community are wary at best of Skyrim. However, that said, there's still a ton of great mods for Skyrim, and quite a few of them tend to get a little overlooked due to the sheer volume of mods released each month. So this series is going to focus on the more underrated mods for Skyrim, which I define as a mod with around 100 endorsements or less, or alternatively less than 400 subscribers on Steam Workshop. And that's been out for over 6 months, and hopefully the goal here is to provide a little extra video promotion for these overlooked mods, since all modders deserve a fair shake, whether they're Skyrim modders or Morrowind modders. Now, we're only going to be releasing episodes once every month, and each episode will look at 3 different underrated mods, like a house mod or dungeon mod or something of that nature. And of course, since this is the pilot episode, we have 3 mods for you guys to check out, and download links for each one can be found in the video description below. So why don't we just go ahead and get started. Our first mod is Asaheim By Kraten. And this mod basically adds a new, I guess you would call it a mini dungeon to the edge of the Reach, and you'll find a bunch of Forsworn battling wildlife right outside the entrance to the main cavern here. You have to fight through the survivors in order to get access, and this might be a moderately difficult fight. But after that you'll find a series of, well, I guess you might call them scenic caverns, since they don't actually have any hostile enemies in them or anything of that nature. Instead you'll find a few scattered journals giving a bit of a history to the place, and there is something of a short story going on behind these caverns and the ancient ruins you'll find beyond them. And it's kind of nice to have a few flavoured text documents here and there. And you'll also find some really nice looking cavern environments, like this rather dramatic area here with large gushing waterfalls, dropping in from above. And sometimes I do have to give it to Skyrim sometimes, because they do have a really good sort of dungeon design. And anyway, when you come out of this cavern, you'll find yourself in the ancient Duma Citadel of Asaheim, secreted away in its own little sort of valley deep in the western mountains of Skyrim. And this is a really beautiful little valley of waterfalls and Duma ruins, which are protected by a handful of friendly guards. And, basically, after that initial fight, Asaheim is a player home that provides a small sanctuary away from the madness and conflicts of the outside world, with lovely mountain views and charming ruins that make a scenic base for a place to call home. Now, to get access to the main hall, you're going to need to find the key, which is hidden somewhere in the cavern system you came through, so be sure to keep an eye out for details. But once you do make it inside, you'll find a rather large central dining chamber done in the Skyrim Duma architectural style, naturally, with a roaring fire and a few waterfalls decorating the place. This player home is essentially divided into 2 wings outside the dining hall, including a wing with a fairly nice library with lots of bookshelves, many of which already contain a number of books for you to peruse. And there's also an alchemy lab on this side, with an alchemy station and ingredient containers with a large array of ingredients you can use to start working on potions right away, as well as a stand with a number of alchemy books. And just going through the main entry hall and dining chamber again, to get access to the other wing. And the other wing of this Duma Citadel here contains a smithy and armory, including a number of different workstations for your convenience, such as a workbench, and also there's an enchanting altar, which is hidden away in a side room here. And again, there's a few cabinets here that'll just, provide you with some basic supplies to get started with enchanting. And you'll notice that most of the workstations here actually already have a few supplies, like the smithy also has access to a number of ingots already. And there is a forge there that you can use to smith your own armor. And over in the side room here, you'll find a smelter for creating ingots, always very important. When you're trying to create your own armor, you do need ingots. And this place naturally also includes a bedroom with a bed, a roaring fireplace over there in the corner. There's some storage and a display case, as well as a single armor mannequin that you can use for displaying various clothing or armors, as you can see here. There's also a marketplace that includes a number of vendor NPCs, each of which have about 1400 bartering gold, enough to buy most of Skyrim's ridiculously undervalued items. And in total, you'll find a bookseller, weapons and armor merchant, an alchemist, and a pawnbroker all under the same roof, all with various potentially useful wares to sell that might help you out on your adventures, and they're conveniently located just off the side of the main house compound. And in any event, Asaheim is just a really nice house mod with a pretty cool environment, and it's worth checking out if you enjoy secluded valleys or smaller Dwemer-themed homes. And next up, we're taking a look at Henrik's Tomb Revisited, Larry's Legacy by GreenSmirf. And this is kind of an interesting one that has, two parts to it. One is, it adds a new house on the edge of Riverwood, with a small archery range overlooking the town, and this is apparently the abandoned property of someone by the name of Larry, a, very lore-appropriate name if ever there was one. And inside you'll find a rather typical Nordic interior with a curious note by Larry mentioning Henrik's tomb, some ancient Nordic burial site just south of Bleak Barrow. And while technically this is a dungeon mod, the house here is actually meant to be used as a sort of player home, with an alchemy station and, other amenities that an adventurer might find useful, especially just starting out. Downstairs you'll find a cooking fireplace with a warm pot for cooking and a number of meats roasting there on the rack, as well as an enchanting table and a few display cases and also shrines that you can use for various purposes. There's even a little sub-basement with a workbench and a number of armor mannequins that you can use to display clothing and armor on, and just to complete the picture, there's also a forge down here for making your own armor. Again, basically, it's a player house mod, but it's also a dungeon mod, because the real meat of this mod here is a new dungeon called Henrik's Tomb, which you can find here not too far away from Riverwood and, not too far from Bleak Falls Barrow. At first this seems like a pretty normal and empty tomb, and you'll find journal entries, left behind by Larry, documenting his progress as he delves further and further into the tomb. Of course, it really doesn't take that long before you start running into the undead, and, these first few areas of the tomb are much like any barrow in Skyrim, full of the undead, with quick fights and battles here, as they rise from their slumber as you pass. Pretty much a normal Skyrim dungeon delve, including the occasional mini-boss fight, with more powerful opponents that you'll need to defeat in order to progress forward, like this fellow here, and this might require a slightly higher level character than you might have otherwise in the Riverwood vicinity. A lot of those dungeons are kind of easy, Of course, the dungeon opens up a bit later on, becoming frosty and covered in snow, and this actually relates a bit to the lore of the place. Apparently Henrik was some kind of frost lord who brought winter wherever he went. And anyway, you'll be fighting through some rather large chambers with tons of opponents to face, and this is probably a little more difficult than the standard fare Skyrim dungeon, as I mentioned before, that some of the vanilla dungeons are, pretty challenging. But still, this is a big area, and you'll need to be careful and come well prepared. And this isn't the entire dungeon, by the way, because the fun in playing a dungeon mod is to explore and discover things on your own. So I'm not going to, spoil the entire dungeon for you. This dungeon is actually quite a bit larger than I've showcased here, with a few more chambers and boss battles and things like that. And actually, this mod contains a second dungeon that I've decided to leave for you guys to find on your own. I believe it's a mine/Dwemer dungeon that's located near Riften somewhere that continues the story of Larry. And again, very lore-appropriate name there. And in any event, if you enjoy a good dungeon romp, you should have a fun time checking this mod out. It has a ton of opponents to face, a ton of loot to find. There's even a few puzzles, and it has a bit of a story, which is more than you can say for most dungeons out there, though Skyrim is a bit better about that than, say, other games in the series like Oblivion. And so it's a bit of fun, and I recommend trying it out if you're in the mood for a good dungeon romp. Finally, we have the Goat Tower by Omniquinn, and as the last mod, it is, well, it's kind of unique, to say the least. It adds a new tower near Rorikstead called, well, you guessed it, the Goat Tower, and funny story, it's actually covered in goats. As soon as you arrive, you'll find a corpse of someone who's apparently fallen to their deaths. Maybe it was a suicide, maybe it wasn't. But there's a suicide note mentioning a missing key to the lair above. Now, here's the really unique part about the Goat Tower. It's actually a platformer mod. You have to jump from platform to platform until you either find the key or reach the top. And you have to do so without falling to your death while these menacing looking goats glare at you with their beady little eyes, full of loathing and hate, just waiting for the right moment to butt you right off the side of the tower and to a quick death. I'm on to you, you pesky little goats. I know your secret evil plots. I've seen the Goat Simulator videos. These sneaky bastards are just waiting for the moment to strike. But you know, with that said, even without the goats, this platforming does carry a slight bit of risk with it. There's the very real possibility of missing a jump and, well, falling to your demise. Though I may be slightly guilty of exaggeration here, the climb up to the top of the tower really isn't that bad for a Skyrim platformer, and you'll probably only die once or twice on the entire trip. Really, the main concern is these bloody goats. So besides their murderous scheming, I'm pretty sure one of them ate the key to the tower lair, but there's so many of them you'd have to kill them all in order to find the key. Unless they don't have the key, in which case, you know, I don't know, that key is very well hidden. I'll just sort of leave it at that. And in any event, the top of the tower is a pretty cool spot really to just sort of sit back and enjoy the view of the surrounding landscape of Skyrim. It is awfully high up though, and hopefully you're not afraid of heights. There's even a bunch of fishing poles up here that possibly someone was going goat fishing or something like that. And you know, that's an interesting concept for a mod, you know, fishing but where the fish are goats. Someone should make that, that's a good idea. But anyway, this is just a really cool and fun platformer mod with a really unique concept that's kind of a, you know, a little bit amusing. And you can see the entire tower here, and it is really cool looking, especially with all the goats everywhere. No matter how full of, you know, nefarious deeds those little beasts are. But anyway, the goat tower is just a great mod for some wacky fun, and it does have a really cool player's home attached to it, should you ever find the key, but I won't show it off here in order to avoid spoilers. I'll just say it's definitely worth the effort to get in, and will undoubtedly give you a bit of a chuckle. Anyway, that wraps up the first episode of Skyrim's Hidden Gems, and let me know what you guys think of this format, and whether or not you're okay with us showcasing the occasional Skyrim mod alongside our Morrowind series. Ultimately, since this is part of the pilot program, it may not get renewed for an entire series, but I think it's a format that could work. But just let me know on that front, and I'll see you all next time with our regular Morrowind and Oblivion mod features.